Hello everyone, I'm Kathi Powers, the superintendent with Twinsburg Schools today. We are so very excited to be featuring our staff from our special education department, the Department of Pupil Services, in our show today. And I know that you're going to learn a lot, and I'm going to learn a lot too as we interview our special education consultant and our parent mentor for our show. So to begin, welcome to Mrs. Monica Price. Good to see you.
I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, and
I like talking about our special ed programs, and we have so much to offer in the Twinsburg schools.
right, and your role is one of special education consultant. That's a different kind of a title. Can you share with our audience today what that means? What do you do as a consultant?
Well, I like to think of myself as a resource for administrators and teachers and parents and students, and I'm available to work with any of the staff members that may need assistance or are looking for some new strategies to work with kids, or administrators may have technical questions or law questions about special ed law, which there are many. So I'm just available, and I try to help out wherever I can.
Well, when you just said that you provide resources, in order to be a person that can provide resources, you have to have rich experiences in the profession. So can you share with our audience a little bit about your background and what led you to Twinsburg Schools?
This is my actual 42nd year in education.
Wow.
I was a teacher for 22 years in the Parma City schools, and then 16 years as a special ed supervisor in the Parma City schools, and then came here. This is my 5th year with the Twinsburg schools. I retired from Parma and decided that I just really couldn't stay home, and decided that I really needed to continue to pursue my love of special education. So applied in Twinsburg, and here I am.
5 years later.
5 years later.
That's amazing. It's been 5 years.
It has been 5 years, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. We have so many gifted educators in Twinsburg and so many people that go above and beyond to provide services for our kids.
You know, when you went back, thinking back to your undergraduate days, what encouraged you to select special education as your area of expertise?
Well, it actually went back before my undergraduate years. It was when I was actually growing up. My mom's best friend had a daughter who was born with cerebral palsy and some significant cognitive delays and nonverbal, and just a number of difficulties. She always needed a summer helper to go to summer camp, and that I volunteered for that and did summer camp with her for probably 5 or 6 years, and before I went off to college, and that cemented my decision. I always wanted to be a teacher, just didn't know what I wanted to teach, and that helped me make that decision.
Wow. And I think sometimes our own personal life experiences lead us to a path, and then you find the joy and the passion and the work. And here 40-some years later, you are still engaged in that in a big way.
And I enjoy every day of it.
That's great.
I'm not ready to hang it up yet.
I know that you work really closely with some of our teachers in providing professional development. And you mentioned the technical nature of the work and the legality of it all. Isn't that very complicated?
It is very complicated because you're having to follow rules and laws, and there are paper and there are forms and and more forms that have to be filled out every time we talk about a special education student, or identifying a special education student, or any of those, anything that involves a special education student. There are rules and laws that are from the State Department, the ODE, and that are from IDEA, which is the federal rules.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of rules and regulations and laws that we need to stay in compliance with.
So part of your work is to make sure that we dot our I's and then we cross our
Yes.
T's, and we make sure that we're in compliance.
Absolutely.
Right, because it's for the good of the children.
Yes, and the paperwork is there's just so much of it that we need to just be really careful with paperwork and taking care of our kids in an appropriate way.
So having had the experience of a teacher, then a building principal, I'm pretty familiar with the experience that a family would have when a child begins to have academic challenges in school. I was wondering, Monica, if you could talk with our audience say a little bit about, a mom or dad is very worried about maybe it's an area of literacy and the child is having difficulty with reading, let's say an elementary school child. What's the process that leads up to the child actually being identified as a student with a disability?
Well, the process always involves a team. So if the family is concerned, I would reach out to the teacher first. That would be our first step. And then the teacher can look at different interventions that can be applied to maybe help that student prior to even getting toward the special education route. But the buildings all have teams of staff that sit down together and then they can talk through and look for strategies and interventions and techniques that they can use with a student once the parent has said, I think there's something wrong here. Or a teacher could say it as well. I mean, it's a team effort. So the team would meet and talk about concerns, and then they would put in place a plan for interventions, and we would look at those interventions fairly regularly to see if they're working. And when we get to the end of those interventions and we feel like, well, maybe these interventions aren't quite as much as what we need to do, then at that point the parent or the staff can say, I suspect this child has a disability. And the state has a variety of different avenues that you can go with a disability. For example, a learning disability or a multi-handicapped or cognitively delayed, or they're blind and deaf, and they have the different categories that we need to stay within when we're identifying a student. So that team would meet and say, okay, I think we suspect that there's a disability, and then kicks in the whole evaluation process, which is another whole
it's very technical
piece of work that needs to be completed.
Sure. So you mentioned a team, that the buildings have teams. Can you just share with our audience who makes up that team?
Well, if we're talking about a student with a reading disability or a reading problem, but we're not calling it a disability yet, but a problem, then we would involve the reading teacher and the classroom teacher, maybe even a speech pathologist, to sit down and talk about what interventions might be, and the parent is always a part of the group, and the administrator from the building, just to talk about what strategies might be available to us to try with this student prior to us saying that might be a disability.
So if you get to the point that the child, a plan of intervention is created, and the teaching staff and some of the related services folks and the parents, of course, are huge partners in this team effort, determine that a child should be tested, and then the child ultimately tests and is found to have a disability, what happens next?
Well, once the team has made that determination and the evaluation takes place, it's called a multi-factored evaluation. So it's not just a test that makes that determination. We bring in, again, the speech pathologist if there are issues with speech and language articulation. We would need to have a school psychologist involved. We would need to have maybe an OT involved, an occupational therapist, if there are fine motor skills, or a physical therapist for gross motor skills. A variety of people are involved in this, and the parents, again, are part of that very important team that will make that determination at the end. And once all of those things are brought, all of those assessments are completed, we sit down together again as a team and determine whether or not we are in agreement that there is or is not a disability. And then once that process is completed, then the student receives what's called an IEP, which is an individualized education plan. And that IEP takes the information from the evaluation that we just did, identifies the needs of that student, and those needs are then transferred into that IEP, which is the plan for that child for 1 year. An IEP is good for 1 year.
So then the plan is put into place.
Yes.
And like in every plan, we have lots of plans in the district. We have goals that we work against. So the child has these academic goals. And then at the end of the year, it's determined whether or not they have met the goals.
Correct.
And a new plan is written.
That's correct. And it could be more than just academic goals. It could be behavior goals. It could be social emotional. It's dependent upon the area that we identified in that multi-factored evaluation and ETR the evaluation team report. So the goals and objectives are looked at every quarter, and a progress report is sent with the IEP that tells us, how the student is doing every quarter on those goals and objectives that we've written into the plan. And the IEP also delineates for the family what services are being offered to the student. So again, in that evaluation, if we've determined that a student needs some fine motor skills, we're going to put occupational therapy into that IEP. And the services are then described exactly what we're going to do in that area on the IEP. The intervention teacher will write what she is going to do exactly and how many minutes a semester or a quarter or a month are going to be devoted to that particular goal. So it's very, very technical and very detailed.
And if I'm the parent, I'm a partner along the way, so I have to agree to the services that the school district would like to provide my child.
That's great. That's correct. And the parent has input into the IEP. The parent should be, is a very important part of that IEP. We sometimes write the goals and objectives, but the parents have to tell us, interests and capabilities and strengths that the student has at home, and what they like to do at home, and what do they see as issues with the school, with how the child is progressing in school. So all of that information goes into that IEP.
It's a long report.
It's a long report and a long process.
Yes.
And it's very detailed.
But it's meant to guide the child to success.
Absolutely.
Now, if I'm a child that has an identified disability, do I have that disability forever?
Every 3 years we do a new multi-factored evaluation. So we look at whether or not the disability that we identified originally continues to be for that child. So we are going to look, we call it our reevaluation process. And by state law, we have to every 3 years, at least every 3 years, redo that evaluation to ensure that the student continues to be eligible and needs those services.
So we could have an occasion where a young child may have an identified disability, but through modifications, accommodations, they may end up being able to test away from participation.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Every 3 years we have to look at it.
Yeah. So it's an ongoing process.
It is.
And really at the center of it all is making sure that our students have the services they need to be as successful as possible.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Well, I think I learned a few things today about special education, Monica. I do appreciate your work with the department. And this year we have a new director, Mrs. Tawana Honeycutt. And someday our viewers will get to meet her. But I do appreciate the work of the department. And you work hand in hand with the general education population, the students, the staff, to support all learning here in our school district.
Yes, we do.
Wow.
And we have a very gifted group of people that are working with our students in Twinsburg.
Yes.
Our intervention specialists, our general ed teachers are all just top-notch.
That's for sure. Well, we appreciate your time today, and thank you for giving us just a little glimpse into the world of special education. And I just am always interested to hear what's going on in your department and actually hearing about the great success of our kids.
Yes, and we have had some great successes. Yes.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
When I return for the second part of our show, we'll be meeting Mrs. Tisha Eisenhuth, who is our parent mentor and who works with our families to help them understand a little bit more about our special education services. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. Today's show is all about our special education programs, and I'm really excited to introduce to you a lady who really supports our parents in our district, and that is our parent mentor. Welcome to Mrs. Tisha Eisenhuth.
Hi, thanks for having me here today.
Absolutely. So Monica Price was here at the beginning of our show and just talked about the process of identifying students for special education programs. But we know in the middle of all of this, all the compliance, all of the dotting your I's and crossing your T's is a family with a child who may be struggling in school, who may be identified as a student with disabilities. And for some of our parents, this is their first opportunity to talk through special education services or intervention services, and it could be really scary. So your role as parent mentor is really critically important to help our families understand some of the ropes and get them to a place of true partnership with the school district. So can you talk to our residents today in our show a little bit about the importance of your role, and what do you see as some of your responsibilities as our parent mentor?
Sure. Just to give you a little kind of background on the Parent Mentor Program, it started all the way back in 1991, and there's actually over 80 of us across the state of Ohio
I didn't
now.
know that. Wow.
Yeah, so it's really a pretty neat thing, and it's pretty unique to Ohio. There's only one other state, to my knowledge, that has this program throughout their state. And what we do is we kind of are a bridge of communication between the school district and the parents. Staff and school districts are fairly used to the process and the language and the special education laws, and that can be kind of overwhelming to parents.
Sure.
We're kind of there to help kind of break that down for parents, maybe translate the language a little bit clearer to them, help them feel more comfortable during the process. And it's nice because all parent mentors have a child of their own that has a disability. So I have had the same kind of similar experiences that parents go through with the special education process. So, I myself have had, the celebrations when you see your child have a breakthrough at school. And I've also, by the same token, have had to have difficult conversations with staff at school as a parent too. So it's like we kind of, have some similar experiences there that we can identify with.
Now, our Parent Mentor program, the one that you're leading here in Twinsburg, is funded through the Ohio Department of Education. And is that the same for all parent mentors throughout Ohio then?
Yeah, there are a few self-funded projects that the school districts fund themselves, but most of the projects across Ohio are funded through the Ohio Department of Education through grants.
Yeah, when we had the opportunity to post for the position and you applied, we were so excited about your candidacy because you speak from the heart of the parent, but you're also very knowledgeable about all the technical things that a school employee would know with regard to special education. How did you get there in this point in time, and what made you interested in becoming our parent mentor?
It's kind of, I guess I would call it the job that I always wanted, but I didn't really know that I wanted, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So it kind of happened that I saw the posting, and I didn't do anything about it right away when there was an opening for Parent Mentor. And a few friends in the community said, hey, you should check that out. That might be something up your alley. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not sure. One of the things that held me back is it was mentioned in the job posting that you need to have a knowledge of special education laws. So I didn't know that I was totally experienced enough in that area, that I, knew enough about special education law on the federal and state level yet to be effective at being a parent mentor. And then, my husband's like, you really would be good at something like that. And I just kept going kind of back around to it. The posting was still there. And I was thinking, and I was like, it really would be nice to be able to help other families in the school district, through this process. And if there's something that I can offer to that, I want to try. So that's kind of how I finally ended up applying.
It was fantastic. And when you're trying to figure out what's best for your child and you're not quite sure of the waters that you're in as far as the special education piece, it's really good to have a go-to person such as yourself you've walked in those steps, I should say, and you kind of understand from a mom's perspective what you really want for your child to be able to do and to succeed. But there are some certain challenges to that. And, being able to sit down with a parent who has a child who is struggling in school is really a wonderful thing. And so I think that's a great service that you provide for our families and also to our staff members too, because I've often seen you in conversation with staff explaining things from a parent's perspective. Sometimes we see things just as the educator perspective, and it's really refreshing to hear the parent side, the point of view, and through that, from both sides, we ultimately are able to create programs for kids that are just fantastic to help them to succeed.
Yeah, I think that's that sometimes, I even just have parents reach out to me and they just need somebody to talk to.
Uh-huh.
So I think that is an important piece, just somebody that's kind of, been through the meetings and all the things that can feel a little bit overwhelming, it's nice that they feel comfortable that they could reach out and ask questions, or say, hey, would you take a look at my IEP before I have a meeting? I have questions and I'm not sure how to go about asking about this, and
Sure.
things like that.
Now, I know you provide a lot of resources. The newsletter that you do for our families is awesome, and there's always links to websites and information that's important things to know. But beyond that, I know that you're engaged in parent education. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so what all of us parent mentors try to do is we try to get as much knowledge for us built as we can, so that way we can share it with our families in our districts. So I do a lot of continuing education through the Ohio Coalition for the Education of Children with Disabilities. So they provide parent mentors across the state a lot of classes and different opportunities. A lot of it's virtual this year, but we do in-person things a lot as well when things are normal. And through our state support team 8 down in Cuyahoga Falls, do a lot of classes, and then that way, I could say, oh, I could, include this in a newsletter, or maybe this would be something that would be helpful to our families. So there's a lot of collaborating with other parent mentors, different ways that we can just build our knowledge base, and then that way we're always learning too, and then we have, more information that we can share with our families in the districts.
I think I've seen you actually host some things at Kent State.
Yes. What we like to do, I collaborate with the Hudson and Nordonia parent mentors pretty closely. So every year we try to offer a parent training night, opportunity that parents can come to a venue like the Kent State Twinsburg campus, or we've done it in a library setting or something like that. And we invite a speaker from the Ohio Coalition who's called an information specialist. So we'll have them come in and they'll do a topic, whether it's, parents' rights in the special education process, or understanding IEPs, and just something. And then usually, the speaker's pretty interactive that we have come to these events, and so parents can ask questions. And it's just a nice way for them to get to know us kind of on a more personal level too, since we host the event.
So those would be events that we would try hosting between Twinsburg, Hudson, and Nordonia.
Yes, and we try to get the word out to our special education families in all 3 districts, and and get as many parents interested as possible.
Oh, I think that's great. I think the bigger the network, the better it is for school districts, and that's wonderful. So in your parent education opportunities, I know recently we heard some great news that you were recognized by the Coalition for your work with Animaker 101. What is that?
So Animaker is an online program. It would most likely be used typically in an office setting. So they may be doing presentations or making a pitch to their associates in an office setting. But, it was just an interesting way to get information out there, I thought. It's refreshing to have something different that's straight to the point and maybe kind of fun. So they're short animated videos. The first one that I made is my role as a parent mentor. So it just kind of goes through and explains what is a parent mentor, what do we do. It's about 2 minutes long. Has a little music with it. It's just a kind of a fun way to reach out. And then I thought, gee, I could make, some other special ed topics, with these videos too. And the benefit of it was that there's a free version of this too. So there's no monthly fee involved, and
right price tag.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So every now and then, if it's a time where I'm not overly busy, I can kind of sit down and go and say, oh, what topic can we get out there? And I've shared them through our intervention specialists, like they can email them out to families, or I'll put them on my webpage, or on Twitter even sometimes, just so families can say, oh, I can look at this for a couple minutes and maybe get something out of it.
Well, I think they're fun to watch, actually, and I think that it's awesome that you're doing that. So like Animaker, we have to keep evolving as professionals who are trying to get information out, whether it's evolving as how you're a classroom teacher, an intervention specialist, or a parent mentor. And I know as we work through this school year with COVID-19 still here, and we never know what tomorrow's going to bring, and sometimes, like in the case of last spring, we had to pivot out. the learning for students with disabilities in the virtual setting is sometimes very difficult. So can you offer some tips to our parents that might assist them in assisting their child when a district has to pivot out to the virtual platform?
Yeah, I think that that is a difficult thing. It can be difficult for any student, and I think it, can especially be difficult for our students with disabilities, as they a lot of times just need that extra support in the school community or that structure. One thing that I found that may be helpful is like a visual schedule. So even if the Google Classroom has a visual schedule online, make one at home. Use a dry erase board or even just a clipboard with a piece of paper and break it down into manageable looking chunks. So, maybe say, okay, here's our morning. Here's what we're going to do at this time, and then we have a break, and here's what we're going to do next. And then we have a break, and it just maybe makes it a little less overwhelming to a student to say, okay, I'm going to have a whole day on a screen and it's all going to be virtual. And
it's too much.
Yeah, so I think just trying to find ways to help your student break it down might be helpful. I've heard that a few parents had some success this year with who are in the virtual academy of using an alarm or setting timers on a device, and it's just kind of little reminders for the student, okay, it's time to log into your class, or it's time to complete this. And some of those students like that, that audio reminder or something just to kind of keep them organized. So I think that that's important. I would say that the most important thing, I guess, out of any suggestion that I could give would be to keep that open line of communication with the teachers and with the intervention specialists, because those relationships, can be a great support. If you keep those strong relationships, it can really help students and parents too.
The partnership can't be understated, right?
No.
So important, right? So if I'm a mom at home, I'm thinking, boy, I need to talk to Mrs. Eisenhuth. I have questions. I know she can help me. How can our parents contact you?
So you could find all of my contact info on my district webpage. So that can be found on the main district webpage. There's a tab all the way at the bottom that says support organizations. So if they click on there, there's a list and it'll say Parent Mentor Program. So that has, my office phone, my email. It also has the videos, some resources, some other online websites that might be helpful to them to learn about special education. So they can reach out to me, by using that contact information. And I also try to post resources on Twitter. So
perfect. And I know I'm always retweeting your stuff, and
that
it's really
helps.
good. Yeah,
gets it out there.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for spending some time today, and I really appreciate what you're doing to help our parents partner with our school family to provide the best opportunities for our students. It is all about the partnership, and I know you are doing such a great job with parent education and advocacy on behalf of the students, so I thank you for that, Tisha.
Well, I thank you very much. I feel very fortunate to just play a small part. I think that I would just say I'd call them the real heroes are the staff and the administration here that has really done so much for our students. So,
well, thank you for that. It's all about a partnership and a teamwork.
Definitely.
Thank you. Well, we hope you enjoyed our look at special education services in the Twinsburg City School District. There are so many wonderful things going on both on campus this year as well as through the Twinsburg Virtual Academy. If you are a parent and you have a question, maybe you have a question for Mrs. Eisenhuth, please follow along onto the district website where you can find a wealth of information, lots of resources, and we're always ready, willing, and able to provide as much support as we possibly can. We hope you have a great day. Thank you for tuning in to Twinsburg Schools Today. Goodbye.